Here, Jesus is coming into Jerusalem. Here, I believe that's yeah. I've got it titled here as chapter a chapter of the stories, a sub-story within Jesus' teaching. When he entered Jerusalem, everyone was asking, "Who is he?" The crowd was telling them, "He is Jesus from David, our king." Then some of our elders with their crowd said, "Teacher, rebuke your crowd." He answered them, "If this crowd becomes silent, the stones will cry out for me." Now, the stones, where are these stones that he's talking about? I'm thinking that this text describing the stones is just a metaphor of those that are the most silent of sounds to them. Example, you could hear the grass rustling or the brush rustling when the wind moves it and things like this, where when a strong wind goes over stones, there's no real sound. So this is Jesus understanding how they knew things made different sounds and stones don't make sounds. So it's pretty much a metaphor, not that they're literally going to, nothing's impossible with our Creator, but the object is Jesus is more or less speaking that the most silent thing that we know or is common knowledge, stones don't make sounds, is what Jesus is saying. I don't know if I've explained this good enough for you to understand that he's using stones as the most silent of matter around them. And I'm just trying to explain this by the wind can rustle the trees, and you hear the trees rustle. In a stronger wind, you would hear the brush along the ground causing a noise or being made to be noisy, where the stones, you don't hear this when the wind rushes by them, even extremely. Anyways, okay, you get the idea here. Then Jesus said, "Had they believed my days," oops, I just remembered that I want to put up the docs here, or the chat board. Just type something, just something to get it started and make sure it's up and running. And I see all the places I'm streaming have this availability for people to make comments. Jesus said, "Had they believed my days, they would have repented. As it is, I am hidden from their eyes." The word days here is emphasized by being all bold, meaning that it's directed by our Creator of the days for the favorable year of our Lord. Okay? So now the days are coming when our enemies will surround Jerusalem to level it to the ground. So this is Jesus's prophecy of talking about how all the granite blocks that make up the house is going to be leveled to the ground, okay? Or removed, and it's going to be just the surface. And this was, I guess, according to history, that I don't like really saying that's exact history, because mankind has been in control of all the texts that you learned for the first 1,600 years. So it's kind of like, example, everything you know about the Roman Empire. Actually, they didn't go searching for Roman information to write it down as history until 700 years after Rome had fallen. So to say that Jerusalem was completely wiped out in the year 70. I can't agree with the year, but I can agree that it was leveled to the ground. Surround Jerusalem to level it to the ground. Not leaving his house one block upon another. Thinking that we know Jerusalem wasn't leveled. Maybe it was burned and destroyed. I guess I don't. The text is telling me when our enemies will surround Jerusalem to level it to burn it to the ground would be a better description of what they'd done, not level it. So I'm going to put burned. As being the more word. Burn it to the ground. And leaving his house one block upon another. Because they did not recognize the time of my visiting. This has got to be like this with red. Change this text. Just like this. And this is going to be caused by our Creator. What's going to happen here? Granite blocks are awfully heavy to move around. Jesus is telling us one block upon another. I'm thinking that this, by removing the word leveled to the ground, we're talking about Jerusalem here, and not leaving his house one block upon another, meaning that they're going to remove the blocks from Jerusalem and create something somewhere else with the blocks. Don't know if this is proven in history of what I'm saying about rebuilding something from these blocks, because some of these blocks have been cracked at when Jesus died on the cross, his body died on the cross, that it says the walls cracked, so by the earthquake. So to finish off the destruction, Jesus is telling us in his prophecy that his house, one block upon another, will not be there. So it does speak about the removing of the blocks. Okay. And I guess people would be removing them to make other things from them because they don't respect our Creator's house. And I don't know if I don't know if the Vatican would have took some of them and created something in the Vatican out of these blocks, because they were very powerful at that time after this complete burning of Jerusalem to the ground. And then this would have had to be taken to be literally saying Jesus' prophecy here as not leaving his house one block upon another. I was thinking maybe a comma should be added. And because we don't have exact history being told truthfully to us, we pretty much have to accept Jesus's words here, especially when I've cleaned up this word here, because it's talking specific about Jerusalem. And then Jesus is saying it's caused because they did not recognize who he was, and those that were in charge um, uh, caused Jesus' death willingly. They caused his death. As we were leaving to go back to Bethany, now this I'm saying had to come from the disciples to have this story being said here. Some of us were talking about Yahweh's house and that it was built with blocks of granite. And I've told to explain why. Because Solomon said that we built him a forever house and it's not made of stones. Again, he told us, this house you look at, the days are coming when not one block will be upon another, or it will be torn down. So here Jesus is now stating more about this. And if I would have read up ahead of time, I would have been able to explain the blocks it will be torn down, because it couldn't be burnt down completely. Inside, there would have been wood walls, wood raftering to hold up the roof, but a lot of that would have collapsed during the earthquake. I'm saying the roof would have, the pieces of stone on the roof, that would have collapsed quite a bit of it. The thing here is Jesus is telling that another time that's going to happen that it will be torn down. So me up here just going by these words explaining that they would carry it other places, Jesus is saying the same thing here. It will be torn down. After it's been burnt, then they would tear it down and reuse. He doesn't say reused. He just says torn down. Now I'm having to add another prophet or another disciple's name here on purpose. Ask him, when will this be? He told us when Jerusalem is surrounded, they will know it is for its destruction. Then Israelis will flee from their hills, and those in their cities will leave, because these are the days of his vengeance, and all his prophecies will be fulfilled. So here, Jesus is now saying that it is our Creator's prophecy, which I know there is nothing in the Hebrew text. I've looked for this before, so I know that it's not there. But Jesus is telling us that our Creator said he would destroy his house because of what they'd done for Jesus. So this might have been part of Isaiah's cruel vision, because he knew of his death. Then he would have probably prophesied that he's going to destroy the house before Jesus is going to be a king in heaven and is the one who's going to replace the priest as the one who talks to our Creator to be forgiven to enter into heaven. So, but Jesus also saying, then Israelis. Now, Israelis, as you know, I use as good people when I'm speaking, using the word Israelis, or I use the word Jews as those that are against our Creator, and sometimes I'll use it as mankind. Jews are turned into mankind. And will flee from their hills, and those in their cities will leave. So it's kind of like we know from history, what's supposedly been written truthfully, that we know that it was gone. Hi, how you doing? I didn't know you could use my last name as your, so you must have sounded, that's kind of unusual. Let's see here. Okay. Hi, how are you doing? This is coming from Kick. Here, you must have just signed up for Kick to do that. Do this. So glad to have you aboard. As I'm telling that you can see above my head here, these are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and these are the verses where they got them. And at this time, I'm teaching Jesus is in Jerusalem. So the areas that I've been talking about are here in the map. That he's here, going back and forth to Jerusalem right now. And there's actually 7 days, absolutely, I know we've got here in the text, and possibly 8, because we know because this is all being said when he entered Jerusalem, is the way I put this, and they're leaving now to go back. So Jesus is talking to his disciples. He told us, and I made it first person to say us, and what was it? And some of us were talking as we were leaving. All this I tried to make as first person as possible, because the way the text and the story goes here, prophecy, and because they are the days of his vengeance, and all his prophecies will be fulfilled. So it was the prophecy that he mentioned, and I'm pretty sure it was going to be from Isaiah, along with his vision that he had of Jesus' death. Woe is to those with children and who nurse their babes, for there will be a great distress upon these people. They will fall by the sword or be led captive to their nation, for Jerusalem will be trampled by the Romans, then and until the times for the Roman is fulfilled, meaning the end of the Roman Empire. So here, what we have is words telling us from Jesus that the Romans are going to come in, burn the city down. Later, they're going to be the ones removing the granite blocks to level Jerusalem, and then all the Israelis are going to truly flee, because Rome is not going to allow them to create a religion or a belief of Jesus being the one who allows you into heaven. We know what goes on in Rome, as they have the belief of the meditation practice to have sex with a so-called female goddess. And I've showed these pictures before of Athena that we still have today in Greece, and how she's tied to the crescent moon. This is Ra, the sun god, tied to the crescent moon daughter, because we learn here in Malachi, that's here, Malachi 2:11, how Judith has married the daughter of a foreign god. To marry, it means you have to have like a sex act, to be able to marry, and this would be the goddess of a foreign god. So it's in the text, it's there that Judah was all the nation, and this is why they were sent into captivity to Babylon. Now it's Rome's turn to come through and now burn everything down and make it a desolate land. So some of the prophecy that's not being told is in these words, that everybody's going to be scattered again to other nations or kingdoms. Israel is a nation because they're made up of many tribes, like the United States is, I would say, is a nation. I know that Babylon had provinces, but I don't consider them as having their own court system before it's sent to the capital city, which was known as Jerusalem at that time, to be the final say-so. And it's not groups of certain people that make up these or certain nationalities that make up these provinces. We know that Babylon sent them throughout all of Babylon. Slaves weren't as slaves as what's pictured in the books as always being whipped on and stuff like this. You had to provide shelter for them to live. You had to provide for their clothing. You had to provide for their food for them to exist as your servant. So they were mainly used as workers over certain areas, such as they would have been sent out to farms, sent out to, say, build blocks, build clay structures, so build roads. This is the workforce, how they got the people. They would bring them from other nations, making them slaves by saying, you're now a worker. Okay? So it's not slaves, yet even though that some of them would have been mentioned as a slave, as a servant for the rich that could afford them to be, they would want to pick or choose who they want to be their servant for them. And this was going to be until the Romans time is up. Now Jesus is going to talk to them. Then Jesus said, my hours are coming for your Son for Man to be glorified by Yahweh. Now, to be glorified, Jesus saying that he is now going to be the absolute king in heaven, and his hours are coming, which means that he's going to die, and he's going to be the first one to enter into heaven to establish his kingdom. And this is what it means to be glorified by Yahweh. Like a grain of wheat when falling to the land is like dying, yet it will bear more grains in life. Meaning from one seed becomes many more seeds to create the wheat. One seed causes more seeds from its one, is what Jesus is saying here. It's kind of like Jesus talking about in his life that when he does die, it is very much like a grain of wheat, how it bears more grains for life. So for those to enter into heaven, okay, more grains in life, existence, I guess, being. Anyone believing me will obey me, and wherever I go, they will be my servants. The word go has to refer to our Creator sending him or causing him to be the first one to enter heaven to establish his kingdom. So where I go, there will be my servants, and everyone obeying me, their Father will forgive them. Still, Jesus is relating it's our Creator's will, and he has just been assigned to judge the people to enter into heaven, okay, because they're going to be in his kingdom. This does bring up to the point of in heaven is our Creator got his angels about him that he never sent to the earth, that he knew that they didn't need to be sent to the earth, are in our Creator's kingdom, and there's Jesus's kingdom of those that have been sent to the earth and then have died and been gathered. Because I'm pretty sure that there's others planets that are going through the same testing as we are on Earth. So just don't think what's happening here on earth is not happening throughout the universe. This is my knowledge of understanding that our Creator's existence is so great that he created many, and I could say trillions of beings before he created matter by creating the universe. Okay, so and you know how large the universe is. You'd just be naive today to think we're the only ones that exist in the universe as knowing that our Creator made us. So from now on, I am distressed, yet I will say to our Father, save me from those hours. And what will I say to our Father? Save me from those hours? And Jesus is talking that he knows already he is going to suffer and die. That's already been mentioned. But here he is stating the same thing that to the disciples again, that he knows what's going on. So this is another private conversation that they wanted us to know, that he knew that this was coming, okay? For this purpose I was sent for those hours. That is to be established as the most obedient to our Creator, to be allowed all his fulfillment of all his promises, statutes, and commands. Jesus fulfilled them to become our King in heaven. And our Father will establish my name by his death, by establishing Jesus, and now the title has been given him, the Christ. So our Father will establish my name, and that means that after he leaves or he enters into heaven, after he has received his body, after he entered heaven, then he came back on earth for what seems to be a few days to maybe a week, but I can't say more than 2 weeks. Okay, so then he's reliant on our Father to establish my name, meaning that by everybody talking about Jesus, our reader is going to have the knowledge of Jesus spread around the world. Okay? Then his voice came from heaven, I will both honor you and I will establish you as their king. So here is our Creator restating what Jesus had said, and this was done for the disciples to understand with his voice that what Jesus said, I will both honor you, he's talking to Jesus, and I will establish you as their king. Now, I've tried to make this as first person as I could, being rewritten by or resaid by the disciples. So all of them heard this. So I'm having a hard time with Judas not understanding what's going on here. But we also need Judas to do what he does to fulfill our Creator's prophecy. So those of you are thinking that Jesus or Judas didn't make it to heaven, well, you got another thought coming here, because without Judas, this couldn't happen. So our Creator allowed Judas to betray him, made sure that he was the one that betrayed him. So there is no thing that says that there's no way that I can accept Judas not entering into heaven, because he too did the will of our Creator. Okay, the next day we left Bethany and he went to his house's gate. So now this is the second day here. So I've got it labeled as second day. He went to his house's gate, and saw money changers seated in his courtyard. You notice how I've got this capitalized and these are capitalized but not bold, so there's a difference that we know they're talking about it's his house, but it's corrupt at this time. So this is because nobody is supposed to be inside the courtyard unless they're anointed to enter to minister to our Creator's sin offerings to be fulfilled, for them to be forgiven. And saw money changers seated in his courtyard, and the people were selling oxen, sheep, and doves. When Jesus entered the courtyard, and as he flipped over the tables with coins for the money changers and the tables for those who were selling items, I'm going to have to put items here. I was thinking about putting that there before, and now I'm kind of pretty much deciding, yes, they had other things besides these, that it was a marketplace other than just a livestock marketplace, okay? He said, remove these things, stop making my Father's courtyard a market for selling. He kept yelling at them, this was prophesied, my house will be a house for forgiving their sin, but the priest will make it a marketplace. I don't know if that text is there, but I will look for that. So I will note it as if I can find it. I want to make sure that it will be noted. So I'm trying to place all the notes that I want. I think this is important that it should be. If I can't find it, then you're not going to find a note there in the final text when it goes into print. Right now, everything can be found in the description on YouTube, or go to my YouTube channel, or go to the website. His disciples, which means I got to use this disciple. Yeah. His disciples later remembered it was prophesied, his zeal for my house will upset him. So this is text by those that had gathered the stories, made a note. And if you notice, it's just one verse. And that's what I said. When you look at all the videos I went through and explaining why, there's going to be a lot of single verses that I stuck within the text that I thought these were the best places to be said. So once they knew this, Jesus was talking like this is what they would be talking about. His zeal for my house will upset him. I am pretty sure that there is none, but I'm going to say I will check again. So, because what I'm going to do here is probably not be streaming after a while to go check these notes out. So I might take a week off, go searching for these really seriously, because I've made a lot of notes to note here. And I think anyways, I've got one book called Yahweh's Everlasting Promises, that all the text is combined, and this text does not have these verses in it, but I put numbers when I break them into different subjects by putting a double space or a single space, and then I have a number, and this is where these numbers are going to show up for you to go look for. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to put as many bookmarks as I need, because, example, I had to make these chapter notes like this, that all these are one type of thing, because if I broke in each section as separate, I had to make them one, because there is a limit of how many chapter headings that you can make, because how many I have to make. Windows, I use Word. I started with Word 1, actually. So I think I've owned 6 different versions of Word, but I did start with Word 1, and to prove that, yes, there was one more disk for Word than there was for Windows when it first came out. The operating system had 24, and I think this one had 24. The other one had 23. So just a little bit of history, how long I've been doing this. Highest priest witnessed the miracle. Okay. Then our blind and lame came to him. Now you got to remember, there's many tribes that are around celebrating or getting prepared to celebrate. So I should have mentioned the text earlier when they were asking, who is Jesus? So you know that there was foreigners involved in Jerusalem. It was not separated. You had Romans, and you probably had other people from other races that had entered Jerusalem. But now they would have been coming from the tribes around that, and also in Jerusalem itself, there would have been true Israelis. They would have came to him, and he healed them. And by his gate, he healed them. Our tribe's highest priests and highest scribes witnessed the miracles he'd done. And this has got to be a note that I'm going to note someplace else that Jesus is going to speak about. So, note below. So I'm just going to say, because I know this is not, what was I saying? From the Hebrew text as a prophecy, but this has got to be mentioned because a lot of people are confused with the Bible text, as like when they wrote it that like they didn't witness these miracles. Okay, so I want to make sure that this note goes with the other texts that they're going to argue about. I want to make sure that people have this knowledge that they did witness miracles he done. Now, the lame, Jesus has healed like deformities. Here, lame is kind of like these deformities. Should I put deformities here? I don't want to try to make 12-year-olds to having to look up in a secular word, a dictionary for the word. So the word lame here is pretty much saying that they had deformities, and say they had a deformed foot, a deformed arm. Jesus, when he was going beyond healing diseases, these were known as miracles. So I have he healed them, and he had miracles happen at this time that they were witnessing. So I want to make sure that is understood here. Then our children were shouting, and this is speaking about the Israeli children were shouting, "We are saved by our son from David." Now our highest priests and highest scribes became resentful, and I couldn't come up with an easier word for 12-year-olds, so this is probably one of the harder words for the 12-year-olds that I think that are in the text. Then a higher priest said to him, "Do you hear what these children are saying?" Jesus said, "Yes. Just as you read out of the mouth of your children, I have prepared praise for him." Here I'm going to have to check to make sure that that text, if it's there, I want it noted here. Then our tribe's priests and highest scribes began discussing how they would arrest him. I was just thinking, I'm using highest here, and I used higher before. I'm using higher and highest. So I'm going to go back and check all the chat. This is going to be a reminder to me. So that's for me to go back and correct whether, because I decided to use highest, then when I was doing this text, I started correcting as higher praise. And there is a difference when Jesus had priests in Israel coming to him. And then there would have been the higher priest coming from Jerusalem, from the higher priest. So I've got to go back, change higher to highest. I do have to change it to highest. They began discussing how they could arrest him, but they were afraid of his crowd. Now, see, the thing here is we already have Caiaphas's, and I've changed Caiaphas's name to Caiaphas. So that's already been discussed once, how to arrest him. But now they were getting to witness how good Jesus was with his words and his teaching, that they were witnessing this, that how they could arrest him because they were afraid of his crowd. When evening came, we went to Bethphage to sleep. Now, this means that he didn't go back to live with Lazarus, okay, to visit there. And it's talking about them now staying as a group before they went to their tribes area to talk to their families, got to visit with them because they came down as a group to celebrate the passing over. And then they came with his mother and father and talked to Jesus. And then Jesus was staying in Lazarus' home, so they all couldn't stay there. But his mother and father could have been back to their tribe area. And then the disciples remained with Jesus as far as the text is telling us. And now it's we, meaning the disciples and Jesus here. And I made sure it's in the first person. And you notice this verse comes from one place, one book, and this verse comes from another verse. Yes, I saved every text I could because when I put this here, it came with 18. Okay. When evening came, they didn't have any text that really said truthfully what happened. So here, this verse 17 kind of falls along with this one. We went to Bethphage to sleep, and I should put a map in here so people get to have this visual of what's going on. I want to make sure there's plenty of maps. So I might note maps here, but they not all have them in there. Because maybe I put a map just to the last chapter that would have these places. They can go to that and search instead of taking up too much space with just map after map. Then maybe I guess I should. Okay, here's what I'm saying. See all this? I made this as one chapter, and this is day 3, but all these subjects are going to be broke down like this. But I've had to put them all together to make it only one heading to get here to start with. And then you have to look for these when Jesus is talking about this part of the story that I put together. And now we're on day 3. Went to sleep. In the morning, Jesus returned to Jerusalem. And by his courtyard gate, our tribe's highest priest and highest elders came as he was teaching. Now here I had to pretty much put in the highest elders because the text had referred to those that were going to be against Jesus. So the higher elders, these would have been those that definitely were having mankind's practice. Now, you must remain single to have this, or you can't share your love between a male and a female after you have this practice, but you can still be living together. So a lot of times what you'll see is rabbis today have this practice, but they're still living with their wife, but their wife still too has the same practice. This practice that I just described of living together is the same way a Taoist life starts until after their children are then grown, then they separate. Okay, just to let you know, I know a little bit about every culture and every way mankind has practiced their sex practice of meditating to have sex with a female goddess. He returned into the gate, and our highest priest and elders came as he was teaching. They asked Jesus, "Tell us, by whose authority did you do to remove those selling and buying?" So I guess this should be what to have a definitive statement later here. Let me see what I've done here, just in case I forgot to click the save button. But Jesus told them, "I could destroy this place, and in 3 days I could rebuild it." Now this is going to be another note that needs to be added below. Because this is going to come up as one of the charges that they're going to have later, and I want it to be easy to find how I have Jesus saying it here, and how they're kind of twisting the words later, or they match up. They said it took 6 years to rebuild this temple. Now here you notice I'm using the pagan definition for his house, because they were putting false idols of their goddess in his meeting room where they were supposed to be meeting with our Creator. They did this, like I said, I showed you earlier how Judah had done this. I guess I didn't show you the king that was doing that, so let me see if I have, where is maps, timeline, go to the timeline. I'm going to show you a king that had this meditation practice, and he started early in life, and he put his image of the goddess in the tent for meeting with in the house for meeting with our Creator. So again, his son did the same, and then Jeroboam and Zedek did as well. That's why these are bad kings. They don't get a capital letter. A good king has a capital letter. They're all good up until this king here. And this means that when he did this, all the priests had to be corrupt. So this is a specific point in time which I say that they are now collecting the scrolls and overtaking the books and destroying as many scrolls as they can to rewrite them for their God. And Jesus is going to mention that later in the text here. So this time took 6 years. I made sure that this was following the text that was found in all the text I found when they were returning, and it had to match up with what it meant, that it was 40 years that before Daniel was sent to start the rebuilding of Jerusalem by King Darius, and then Cyrus become the second king. And it talks, you don't have a lot of people, but they built the house first. 6 years would have been the timing that I figured out by trying to study the text. And then it took them to restore all Jerusalem and get it built up to a city, completed the 70 years. So that would have been from the time that they were sent to captivity to Jerusalem and his house being completely rebuilt. And here I'm saying that they've got I got the use of the word temple correctly because they are the bad guys. They're mankind, and you will rebuild it in 3 days. So here I had to put could, and they said he could rebuild it in 3 days. Now this, I have to describe mankind's practice right now, and to say that this number 3, I should change it. And this, I'm going to put a note here, and I'm going to put it in a color that actually shows up, that I still might change it, because under meditation practice once a year, and that's in October on a crescent moon day, that a male's maleness will retract inside his body, and then 3 days later it will return to be normal, and it is leprosy-like. So the thing here is this is known by me, and yet I left the 3 days here, and I don't want to imply that Jesus was referring to this time. So I'm going to change that right now, and I'm going to say 2 days, because I want it to say something other than what Jesus is, what's noted as 3 days. So I'm going to put 7 days. And why did that? Because our Creator gave me some thoughts just now that I hadn't had ever pop in my mind. And that is that he could call upon the people there, that if it was destroyed, they would rebuild it, and they could do it 7 days because of how many people were there. Okay? So I'm going to put 7 days here, and I have to do that as well later, because I'm completely getting rid of mankind's words. I'm getting rid of this text, or this number 3, for 3 days, and you know the reason why now. Then Jesus said, I will ask you one question. If you answer me, I will answer you. And this comes to the question of up here, by whose authority did you cast them out yesterday? The house out of the Creator's for Aaron. The baptisms by John, were they commanded from Yahweh or from men? Now, I know that the text refers to John and Jesus meeting each other in heaven before they were sent, so they knew each other and had commands from our Creator, and that's why John was baptizing for a repentance for sin, which is different from the corrupt priests. Our Creator wanted people to be forgiven by John, to have them understand that the priests are corrupt at that time. Baptism no longer exists from John's time, because nobody can forgive you to enter into heaven except for Jesus. Okay. They reasoned among themselves, if we say from Yahweh, he will say, why do we not believe him about me? And I made sure that these are not read, but this would be about John and Jesus. When I'm saying he, this will be Jesus. That's why it's got a capital letter. But it's them not believing, so it's their questioning that they absolutely don't believe who he is as their king in heaven. If we say for men, we are in fear by his crowd of getting stoned to death, for they all believe John is his prophet. And notice here, again, no bold words except for that they're all capital to mean that they know that he is a prophet under their eyes of knowing the text that they corrupted, and they knew they corrupted it, but they knew that that's how they understood who a prophet was, especially by his wardrobe. So they answered, "We do not know." Jesus said to them, "Neither will I answer you." So now we have Jesus showing how smart he is and how they're just questioning him to come up with reasons to arrest him. Isn't going to be as easy as they thought. Okay. Then he told them by a parable. Then he told them a parable. A male planted a vineyard and built a fence around it. Then he rented it out to grape growers and went on a journey. At harvest time, he sent his servant to the grape growers to receive his share of grapes. The grape growers beat him and sent him away empty-handed. So he sent 3 more. One they killed, others they beat. Now the owner thought, he will send his son, perhaps they will respect him. When the grape growers saw him, they said, there is the heir or inheritor. Let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. They killed him and threw his body out of the vineyard. What will the owner of the vineyard do when he comes? Now, they answered, now this is him talking to the highest priest again. They answered, he will bring those killers to their end and then rent out his vineyard to other grape growers who will pay him with his grapes at their season. So they understood Jesus's words literally here, and they didn't understand it was a parable. Okay? Then Jesus told them, my kingdom is from Wybe, will not be taken away by you. Now they understood that this was a parable about them. And this is like a male who planted a vineyard. That would have been our creator, made the nation Israel and created his tent for meeting and built a fence to create the courtyard. Okay. And then he rented it out to grape growers, meaning these are the priests that were there to do the ministering for our Creator. And our Creator went on a journey, meaning that he didn't make himself known to everybody like he did in the leading his nation out of Egypt. So he didn't make himself known to a lot of people at one time, except for in Babylon by making Nebuchadnezzar eat grass, and then Nebuchadnezzar agreed with him. So he did show himself as the creator of everything, like he did in Egypt at Babylon's time. A lot of people miss that point. He went on a journey. Okay, now at harvest time, this is going to be talking about when Jesus comes. He sent his servants to grape growers. These are going to be prophets during the time of a harvest, at harvest time. It would have to be an S here, at harvest time. It has to be an S to be described other than Jesus's time. At harvest times, he sent his servants to the grape growers, meaning now the corrupt ones that are there, to receive his share of grapes. Grapes are going to be those that are to be, those that are to enter into heaven. The grape growers beat him and sent him away empty-handed, so we know that they killed prophets. So he sent 3 more. One they killed, the others they beat. Now the owner thought he will send his son. Now this here is represented not as Jesus is absolutely our Creator's son. Our Creator exists as himself, or he's known to us as just as himself, but he created angels for other beings to exist. But at that time when their thought, example, the king, when he was there, his son would sit to his right, meaning he's going to pass on his kingdom to his son. On his left would be his wife. Okay, so when you've seen the text or read the text early about Zebedee's mothers asked them to her son sit on right and left, she doesn't seem to understand the trueness of how the past kings had lived and what the designation was. But at the time of David's time, when is talking about he will sit at my right, meaning his kingdom will be in heaven, they would understand that this is being passed as the meaning of the changing of his promises, how to enter into heaven, and others from other nations will enter into, or kingdoms will enter into heaven. So this text here is just that the owner's going to give it to his son as an inheritance to pass it on. But in the way the Proverbs are to be understood, they all are talking about Jesus and our Creator and what happens with the wording having this parable meaning. He says, perhaps they will respect him. Then the grape growers saw him. They said, he is the heir, let us kill him. Okay, so this was about them going to kill him. Okay, and they were thinking that once we kill him, everything we teach them, they'll become our followers, having our beliefs of this meditation practice by deceiving them, but they would replace Jesus forever and teach against Jesus. And there is a video in the description below on YouTube, or you go to my YouTube channel and just type in the word myth. You will find that a bishop today on a video actually said that the church fathers have always taught Jesus as a myth, and you're not supposed to read the text literally. So they made up these stories and told you what a word from here or over here and over here means, and not what it means in the verse itself. So that's coming from a bishop that has this sex practice. So anybody today want to go ask that, can't think of his name right now, Barnes. Yeah, anyways, it'll be in that video, and you can actually hear what he says to people right there. In fact, it didn't even shock the guy that was commenting to him. So that guy has to be grouped into the mankind, because he understood what he meant when he said myth or mythos. So that's kind of like they would have, I want to make sure I explain the proverb. Then he looked at them and said, what is this prophecy about? His stone the builders rejected became his cornerstone. Now this, I'm pretty sure I've looked at it, but I want to look one more time. I don't think that's in the text, but if it is, I do want to note it here. This came about by their Lord, and it is marvelous in their eyes. So this had to be all one part of a story to say what was going on in myself. This would have to come from Isaiah or a prophet after Isaiah that was talking about the cruel vision that Isaiah had received, and then other prophets could have built upon it by our Creator giving them these words to be written. But I'd say it has to start with Isaiah's cruel vision, and then I think there's like 3 prophets after Isaiah. They answered, "We do not know it," and I put it as a capital letter, meaning that it's our Creator said these things, but they don't believe it. Then Jesus said, "I tell you by Yahweh's authority, I will now teach them." So this is Jesus saying he is the cornerstone that they are rejecting, and he will be the teacher, and they won't be the teacher. That's why I have these stories put together. This here, when I was reading to group them, this one was too easy to put together to say that all these, because you got to realize, take a look at this. It starts out when I go to Mark, then I go to Luke, then I come back to Mark to finish up this, then I go to Matthew, then I go to Luke, I come back, this is 17, and Luke 13:14 had this text again saying these things together. So it might not have been that hard to put together, but this was easy to say that all these words from Matthew are then put together here, would have to go with these verses here. Okay, I was just looking at the time to see. I don't try to make these over an hour and a half. I think I need to make 3 more videos to get to, because I'm on page 30. My pages are 20 inches long, and there's 47. So maybe I'll figure out when to make maybe the last 2, maybe only an hour long. Now what is your thinking? A male had 2 sons, and to the first he said, "Go work today in my vineyard." He answered, "I will," but then he did not go. The second he said the same words, and he answered, "I will," but he did not. But after he had guilt, he went to work. Which of the 2 did the will of his father? They answered, "The second." Now, this is talking about, again, Jesus's kingdom, okay? And he had 2 sons. And what these are grouped as those that were to be forgiven. And it would be the first son, would have been the priest that we was talking about, but he did not go, which means they did not pay attention to our Creator, that they would keep ministering to him. And the second came and said these words, and this would be about Jesus, and this would be Jesus having these thoughts of, like I said, he understood he was going to die. Here, Jesus is pretty much saying that of himself, when Jesus was told in heaven, this is pretty much Jesus's inner thoughts, that he started to think that I might not do this, and then he said, "I will do this," because he trusted our Creator, because I'm really, really sure that Jesus is the first being our Creator created. So this is Jesus informing you about the time he is told of his assignment to come to earth to fulfill our Creator's prophecies. So he answered, "I will," but he did not. So it means that he had second thoughts, not that he didn't, because he's saying after had a little bit of guilt when he had them first thoughts, he went to work. Now, all thoughts are given to you by our Creator. So our Creator give him them thoughts to have that. so he could make the choice. Our Creator gives everyone's thoughts, and among our thoughts, we'll have a lesser thought, meaning one that is not the better of the two thoughts, okay? And so Jesus is pretty much telling us that he had those thoughts, and I'm telling you, our Creator give him them thoughts for him to have this guilt feeling by having the thoughts, these thoughts that he was going to take a lesser thought, okay? I just want to make sure that people understand Jesus is like you, and we are to follow Jesus, okay? So the thing here is your thoughts, everyone's thoughts, are given to us by our Creator, and one thought is lesser than the other. That's why if people take the lesser thought, they start becoming wicked, then they become evil, and then evilness exists, and even evilness is perfect because our Creator is perfect. So every possibility of everything has already been determined by our Creator, and you have to reject the lower thought, not the lesser thought, to become more righteous. Because one path leads to evilness, the other path leads to our obeying our Creator to be a righteous, to enter into heaven. Okay, then Jesus told them, taxmen and whores will enter my kingdom, but you will not, for you went to John and did not believe him. Yet taxmen and whores did believe him. You watched me and did not believe me afterwards. Now, I could rewrite this, but I was thinking that I'd be too much influencing of what I want into the text than saying, because here you did not believe I am your king. See, believe I am your king afterwards. But so I'm just going to leave it this way here. You watched me, meaning that they witnessed the healings, even the recreation of limbs distorted like because when people break their bones back then, if they weren't actually set correctly, they would walk with a limp. They would be what's known as the word lame. So he was reforming their bones to be correct. And if the deformity of like a short arm or a hand that's kind of webbed together is then, I don't want to say made normal, but made in the likeness of our Creator. Everyone has burdens, so everyone has a problem. Don't look upon others and saying that's wrong. I really hate it when men call women ugly or speak out aloud about the way a woman looks as saying that something that they could not accept to live with her. My answer to this, or my question to them is, whom are you to judge our Creator's work? Plain and simple. Our Creator created everybody, and you're commenting against our Creator's creation, the way he made them. So the thing here is those of you who truly understand this, and if you understand it at a very young age, that you are to be friends with all people. And so when you see somebody degrading a woman for being ugly, you should befriend her as a friend, and you should be explaining to her, maybe one of my friends would like to come to know you, so I can, or you want to know if one of my friends like me, I will be the go-between and let you know. And if one of your girlfriends want to know one of my friends a little bit better, then you can tell me and we can relate and share the helping of each other, walk forward in life better. Okay? Never look down on somebody as how they look or how our Creator created them. These people grouped here, they were saying harlots. And the word harlot, when I'm using it in the Hebrew text, I'm using it as this goddess in their forehead. They had harlotry, meaning that they were having this meditation sex experience with this female goddess. Okay, so the word harlotry is one way, and whores are those that make money for having sex, and they know when at a certain point that they're wrong in their life, but a lot of times it's caused upon them. So the thing here is Jesus is saying they will be forgiven, okay, because what they were made to do. Women are made differently, created differently than males on purpose, okay? Today, women can't even decide whether to have an abortion or not, even up until the last damn day, okay? And then they still have an abortion, even though it's wrong. I'm just saying that they should have had the abortion early in life, earlier in the time when they know that they were pregnant. So the thing here is they are murderers, okay? But a lot of like those, they have been forced upon a will, but their will isn't like a male's to say, let me take care of the problem now. Example, I know males that are listening to me will understand that a woman never answers you directly to a question if you're asking a yes or no. Okay? This goes to my point here of them not making quicker decisions. When you look at the people saying women aren't bosses or made the CEO of a company today, but they should make equal wages. There are some women, and I've met plenty of them. I worked in an engineering facility for General Motors, and I met many of them over the 29 years I worked. And those that became bosses made that decision quickly by saying yes or no. Okay? There are many men that will not say yes or no. In fact, I've noticed, because I worked with a lot of foreign people from many different countries, their race has a respect for elders that you don't question the elder. So a lot of times you don't see foreigners getting a better position of job because they won't put forth their ideas. They will be listening to you tell me what to do and I'll do it the best way you want to be done, and saying that you told me to do this, I think I got a better idea, and then to speak it, they won't do that. Their culture is just to respect elders no matter what. Okay? To say that, I know that, well, I don't need to get into that, but I did know a woman that she wasn't there a week, and in a meeting, I seen her going one-on-one with the chief engineer, like she was asking him questions, and when he would say something, she would think, and then she'd come back and kind of challenge him. They didn't realize this, but the chief engineer likes that because he's wanting to teach you his job for you to be better for the business. she would do this, and I told her that right after that meeting that she's going to become a boss. And I told her in 10 months, and she come back after 10 months like, how did you know that? And I told her, I says, this is what you got to look for when you're going to replace yourself. So it's a good lesson that you're one of the very top 20% of women that will take a challenge and do this combat that's needed to become the business, because business isn't a moral. Business is about a dollar. Okay. So when people say business is business, they mean it's not about morals. Okay. Even though they'll trap you by asking you, what do you think? Would I make a better choice? And the boss is putting you in a position to judge on your morals and taking advantage of your morals. You got to learn how to argue around it, because that's called boxing you in. So it's also talking about how come you don't see a lot of women as higher ups in the business, because everything is decision. You got to make multiple decisions. You don't have time to say, let me think about this for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Money's happening now, okay, and can cost, in big business, cost the bottom line in the long run. I've said all that, but I know that it's getting close to the end here. So, yeah, I'll get through this and then I'll be done with teaching this and a little bit of extra for you. Then our tribe's highest priest and highest elders understood he had been speaking about them. They wanted to arrest him, but they feared his crowd because they knew him to be their king. Okay. So that was all that second day, and I'm going to go to the fourth day now. Literally, like I said, these are going to count down his days in Jerusalem. So with that, I'm going to put up what is the helper and the words of Jesus about the helper, and the words in brown are of me. So I'm going to let that play for you to take a screenshot and also read it and study it. And it gives me a place to where inserting the video that you watch. Hopefully I have it. I did set it as you're supposed to watch the last video.